many days, Hamza? 5?
3 days?
5, I think.
It's Tuesday.
Anyhow, we couldn't wait for the Liverpool game. We couldn't wait really for the analysis of Andy Gray and the crew. So we decided we'd make this video for you, in which we're going to be discussing the lineups, we're going to be discussing the tactics, and we're going to be discussing where this match is going to be won and lost between Liverpool and Manchester City, the two sides gunning pretty much for the Premier League title this season. And right off the bat, I'm going to put Hamza on the spot. I'm going to ask him what he thinks the final score in this match is going to be. Hamza, let's start with the lineups of the two teams. How do you think, and particularly of interest to fantasy users around the globe, how do you think Pep Guardiola is going to line up this Manchester City side?
With Pep, I think it's going to be interesting. If in terms of the back four, I don't think he has many choices since Laporte is injured. So most likely, and I don't think he trusts Otamendi that much.
I don't think anyone should trust the Stones Otamendi pairing.
So it's probably going to be Stones and Fernandinho again, with Walker and Mendy on the right and left. With, I believe, it's going to be Gundogan, KDB, and Bernardo Silva in the midfield three, and with Sterling, Mahrez, and Aguero.
Well, needs must, it seems, doesn't it? Because the amount of injuries the City are suffering. We might see a lot of kids on the Manchester City bench this weekend. Mm-hmm. That's how bad things have become for the champions. Maybe not the ideal preparation, because Liverpool come into this particular game with pretty much their entire team fit. And it's really more of a question of who do we fit into this side based on the recent good performances by some of the guys who've been out for a very long time. The back five really picks itself. You've got Trent, Robbo, Matip, Van Dijk, and Ederson in there. Fabinho is definitely not getting dropped. Henderson in a big match like this is almost certainly going to play. The front three, no debate there. Salah, Mane, Firmino. And the last midfield position, now this is the interesting one, because you've seen Oxlade-Chamberlain come in and play really well. Lallana's come back, put in a decent spell as well, but it's unlikely that either of them is picked for a game of this magnitude. What you're left with is, if you're going for a bit more of an adventurous approach, you can go for Gini Wijnaldum, which might help you a lot if you can get him to get into the box, make those runs in attacking areas, and exploit some of the crosses that are likely to come in. Yeah. Or you can go for the more circumspect option of James Milner, who gives you a lot of running and a lot of hard work, and also has the ability to whip in a few balls from time to time. So it really depends on the clock, but I wouldn't be surprised if, given the game that it's at Anfield, he goes for Gini Wijnaldum and the threat that he can pose in the other balls.
I agree with that. I love James Milner, don't get me wrong, but I think this is not the sort of game for him. It would be pragmatic to have him, but Klopp's not really that pragmatic. And I think Wijnaldum is the main choice for him in the midfield three because of his attacking aerial ability and his attacking ability.
So I guess let's get straight to the point. Where is this game going to be won and lost for you?
I believe it's going to be won and lost in the midfield, with especially in the battle between Fabinho and KDB, Kevin De Bruyne, because of the fact that Man City need, especially without Silva and without Gundogan and Bernardo Silva sort of playing defensive roles, Kevin De Bruyne is going to be the major outlet for them to create their attacks and create the enticing balls for the top three. So with Fabinho on top on him, that's going to be the real battle, because if Fabinho finds a way to cut off the supply lines, that's it for Man City, and that's exactly how Klopp wants it. But on the other hand, as we all know, Kevin De Bruyne is no slop, and he's probably going to be
absolutely
all over.
He manages to find pockets of space wherever he is, and no matter how deep he is on the field, he's able to find some very interesting balls to play as well. But it's an interesting point you make about Bernardo Silva particularly having to do a lot of the legwork, and particularly in this game because it's very likely that Gundogan is going to be starting that defensive midfield role. So they're probably going to need a little bit of extra cover as well. And we've seen in recent times, Pep has changed the tide in terms of his one-to-one head-on with Klopp. And the way that he managed to do it was by having Bernardo Silva employed in a slightly deeper role and switching from a 4-3-3 to a more 4-2-3-1 type of formation. And you say that obviously Kevin De Bruyne being nullified is going to cause problems for City, which makes sense because often they try to get one or two men free between the lines, and it's often Kevin De Bruyne, David Silva, Bernardo Silva that's in that role. and that's how they try and create through the center. So obviously, if Fabinho can nullify Kevin De Bruyne, they're going to struggle in that area. But that's something that we saw in the last 2 games between Liverpool and City as well, where Pep Guardiola pretty much ceded that midfield battle and decided to operate through the wider channels, wherein even if he loses the ball, the ability to stay in shape is greater, and therefore there's less of a threat of being counter-pressed and being exposed at the back. And the way that they tend to exploit those particular areas, Manchester City in particular, and I think you in particular are a big proponent of this approach as well, is that they create overloads on the flanks. So you've got your winger, you've got your fullback, and you've got your attacking midfielder attacking that pocket between the centre back and the fullback. And I think it's an area that in this particular game will be there to be had, because you don't want one-on-ones with Van Dijk, because you're not going to win many of those.
Exactly.
But you can create problems in the areas that the fullbacks might leave and the centre backs, particularly given how adventurous Liverpool fullbacks
are, especially at Anfield.
And if Fabinho can be focused on Kevin De Bruyne, you might see spaces for Bernardo Silva to get into those areas. Aguero could get into those areas and create a few problems as well. City like to play on the cutbacks a lot, and that's another area where Aguero could be able to nullify the superior aerial threat of Van Dijk and Matip and maybe create some chance. And we know he only needs half a space and he can get a goal, and that's how he did it last year.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the brilliance of these 2 teams is that is the fact that the top 3 of both of them are so good, is that all they really need is that slight one chance. And I love the thing that you said about the cutbacks that they enjoy, because that's the main sort of attack that City are going to use. The little triangle that the players on the side, right side or the left side play, and they get a quick cutback onto Aguero, who makes the perfect run, and they keep scoring goals. I saw that much to my dread when they did it against Chelsea and scored, I think, 5 goals against or something like that last season.
Yeah.
But I think that's a similar ploy that can be used, and it's something that they do it very well. And one thing that you did mention is the fact that the wing backs at Liverpool are usually far up, and that if they manage to pin them back, try to counter this tactic, that works against Liverpool. So this is going to be a lot of mind games being played with regards to this.
And definitely, I think we can expect the game to be played more in these wider areas by Pep, because he tried to regress to the mean again in the Charity Shield game. But Liverpool basically battered City in the second half, because the midfield kept making a lot of mistakes, kept handing the ball over to Liverpool, and Liverpool kept cutting through them, kept exploiting the space in behind. So I wouldn't be surprised if Pep goes for a more circumspect approach. But you mentioned the fullbacks. I'm going to put this to you. How crucial are the Liverpool fullbacks going to be for their attacking threat on the other side to Liverpool? Because we know that Liverpool have struggled a bit to create through the centre.
I think Liverpool's wing-backs are critical to them in almost every game. That is one of their biggest weapons, and the way these 2 have actually played also in testament to the fact that the numbers that they get in fantasy show how amazing they are. So I feel that is something that's going to use, and this wide angle play might nullify them a little bit. But then again, that's the thing. That's a risk that Pep's willing to take. However, the thing with the wing backs is they can actually also use the running, the flying wing backs of City, and this attack that the City sort of uses to moor them wide, to move slightly inward into side back range, and move in between the centre backs and where the wing backs would be, and sort of use the aerial strength that Wijnaldum possesses to actually get a lot of goals that way. And especially if you look at the 2 centre backs that they have, this could be a possession. And then similarly, I feel another key aspect of this whole aspect of this, and then you mentioned that how it happened in the last game in the Community Shield game, is that the midfield 2 of City have to be very careful in Gundogan and Bernardo Silva to be able to keep the ball and avoid the massive press that Liverpool possess. Because if they're not quick about it, the midfield attack of Liverpool is going to run through them, and the top 3 are just going to bite at whatever comes at them, and City isn't going to get punished with that.
I think absolutely, you're right. And you mentioned the point about the centre backs. And you've got Fernandinho, who's not a regular centre back, so you've got Stones, who's not particularly good in the air. And you're likely to see a bit of an aerial bombardment, because Trent Alexander-Arnold and Robbo are going to constantly be throwing crosses in.
Yeah.
You've got Mane to attack it, Firmino to attack it, Wijnaldum if he plays can attack it as well aerially. So that's an avenue that they're going to have to look at. We know, particularly with these two centre backs, if City overcommits at any point, that's a big question.
Yeah.
Often, and this was a thing that Norwich took advantage of,
Exactly.
these centre backs leave themselves vulnerable because they're not necessarily protected the best by their midfield or by the fullbacks around them. In most games, City don't really need to worry about the counter attack, but Liverpool have the ability to play balls over their press. And if you throw it into Firmino, Mane and Salah, they have the ability to utilise it and to quickly break on the counter as well. So the fact that Fernandinho and Stones is a partnership could create problems for them, both in terms of the counter attack, in terms of the balls being played into like difficult areas, and whether Fernandinho has the nose to be able to deal with them, given he doesn't normally play. And also set pieces, because you've got Van Dijk and Matip to add to the additional threat of all the other guys that will be there. Whereas City are largely going to be fielding a team of very, very small men. So it'll be really interesting to see how Man City cope with all of those threats Liverpool can pose.
Yeah, definitely, and I think you sort of hit the nail on the head with the analysis on Robbo and Arnold being utilized a lot, and it's just I find it so very interesting how well these two have sparkled under Klopp and how well they've done that is, and it sort of reminds me a little bit of how United used to be when they had Beckham and Giggs, and well, it was on a different system. These two were the players providing crosses. Is the accuracy that they have.
Absolutely.
So with that, I think Liverpool have a major potency in their attack that it will be tough for City to sort of counter.
So with all of that said, where do you think this match is going to go? What's your prediction?
Oof. I think deep down inside, I sort of thought about it today, and I feel it's going to be a Liverpool win. Maybe it's sort of my love for Klopp speaking up right now, but I think Van Dijk is going to be the sort of difference in this whole thing, and he's just very, very good, and he's someone who will hold off a lot of the attacks and the cutbacks that Aguero gets in the main attacking line that City have. So I see it a tight game, maybe a 1-0 or a max a 2-1 for Liverpool.
Well, I'm very much on board with you there, because as smart as Pep Guardiola undeniably is, he has his hands stretched to the maximum in terms of the injuries that the team are facing. And at the same time, Klopp's Liverpool seem to have, as previous season progressed, and as this season has gone on, they seem to look like a team that's gotten smarter and smarter. I don't think they're necessarily going to afford Man City a lot of spaces. I think they're going to be very clever about the ways in which they attack, and I think through those set pieces, through those wider areas, they're going to have enough to damage City. And given that City have generally struggled for goals recently, I'm going to also go for a 2-1 Liverpool win, and possibly with that, the end of the title race.
Oh wow, it's a bit early for that for me, but the scores we do agree on. I think let's end with that without us fighting on more. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. Please like, share and subscribe, and more importantly than that, comment, tell us what you think, give us your predictions, give us your analysis, and if you want to come on, hit us up.